Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Avoiding Broke podcast. It's me, Jermaine. Hope you're having a blessed Sunday. So, guys, just this morning, I want to share some very quick, I'm going to call them cost of living lessons that I've been really taking through the month of July. You know, if you're following the news and even if you're just watching your bank account, there's a really good chance you're feeling the pinch. You are seeing prices creep up and you're feeling that your money's not quite going as far. And in July, there are a few things that have really occurred to me which are going to help with the strategy going forward. So number one is really just to have a very clear understanding that all supermarket spend and expenses has increased beyond any reasonable expectation for me. So for a while, you know, we've been talking about, like 10%, 15% inflation really kind of filtering through and hitting immediately. You know, I think we're at least at the 15% level based on what I can see in supermarkets. Plus the other thing that's happening, and if you just watch for this, it's going to be clear, is the size of what we buy, the quantity sizes are reducing. So effectively, these companies are going to be increasing the amount of revenue they're making kind of almost per unit. But really for us, it means that we're getting a lot less for our money. That for me is critical because everything that we're going to be looking at to really try to make sure we're smart and effective on managing this cost of living crisis is all about managing what you do day to day. It's the first and easiest thing to do. And so when supermarkets, and it's a food, the basic necessity, the basic staple, when that starts coming out of reach or it's a lot harder to eat as you used to, maybe a lot harder to keep yourself really healthy, that's the point where we need to start making adjustments. So one thing I've been talking about recently, and it's kind of, I've been doing it really probably for about 30-40% of the time now, is going vegetarian. Just cutting meat out, avoiding that expense, and obviously giving the body a bit more time to kind of grow, build, develop in a slightly different way. I think it's going to end up being a pretty staple part of our strategy. Definitely something that we're going to be doing a lot more. But the key thing is supermarket spend. I think supermarket price increase are at least at 15%. A really interesting thing that I read in the last few days is all about how, due to the cost of living crisis, people are going to have to start cutting back on core expenses like insurance. Now that's pretty frightening. In life, typically we have got a lot of insurance. Now, depending on where you live, you're going to have some of it included. You're not going to have to pay any extra for it. But if you think about it, we look at public services like police, firemen, ambulances, so medical professionals. For most of us in most of our economies, we have got some kind of basic care included. What then happens is we pay for other things, like we pay for home insurance, we may pay for other medical insurances, specialist medical insurances, that type of thing. We pay for car insurance. So alongside eating and being fed, we have got insurance as a backbone of what we do in society. And if we think that cost of living crisis is going to be so bad that all of a sudden spend on insurance is going to start reducing, the frightening thing is to really look and say, well, are you reducing spend that is for you essential? And some people will be. That means some people are going to need to get to work, but they can't afford to insure their car, so they're going to drive uninsured. That means some people in some countries where you need medical insurance won't be able to afford the premiums, so they're going to go underinsured. That means some people with specialist needs are going to need to pay for specialist care, but they can't afford to do it, so they're going to go underinsured. That is frightening, completely frightening, because it's the protection we need for some core things around our home, around our health, around our living standards. They're going to be under threat. And I'm taking that really serious because nothing good comes of that. Nothing good comes from people not being able to afford basic things they require to sustain themselves and to protect themselves. Nothing good comes from it. So that's something I'm watching really, really keenly. So here in the UK then, this is a third point I'm going to be mentioning here. here in the UK, we had some suggestions that interest rates could creep up to 7% in order for Liz Truss, one of our political candidates, to be able to afford the economic policies that are being put forward in like a leadership run. Look, I think let's just take a step back from the detail and let's just look at the whole point about interest rates increasing more generally. When interest rates increase, that can in itself just kick off a massive challenge for people. And there are two fronts that I'm really interested in. So one is if you are basically on any variable rate debt, and the biggest one is going to be your mortgage. If you have interest rates increase, what does that do to your ability to afford where you live? You know, I was having a conversation with somebody on TikTok, and straight away their comment was, if rates go up to 7%, I can't afford to live in my home. And that's the frightening reality, which is giving me a bit of concern and really thinking, how can we help people escape that? The second element is to think about interest rates and the cost of debt. So, and not even just cost of debt, but really also the people's need for debt. So here's what can happen. When interest rates go up, and prices in the economy are going up due to inflation. Well, most people can't necessarily afford to live day to day. So what do you do? Well, typically what you're going to see is more people taking out credit cards, more people buying things on finance. You've got more buy now, pay later. As I say, you've got credit cards, you've got other types of store finance. When that happens, you've got the higher interest rates attached to it. But at the end, what do you see at the end? You see more normal people with more debt because they couldn't afford things at the basic cost, and so they've had to borrow to afford. That's the story. That's frightening again, guys, because we're talking about basic living. We're not talking about when we were during COVID and some people were on furlough or getting their checks from the US government, and basically they just had extra money, spare money, so they could go crazy with it and they could spend with it. What we're talking about is people not being able to afford basic living, and so having to borrow to do the basic things. And of course, to get out of a cycle of debt is incredibly difficult. And so that is what I'm really looking at, because I don't think we're all protected from it. I think we're all going to have to work really hard to make sure we don't fall victim to those cycles. So as I say, I'm really focused on this supermarket spend, where I think real prices are truly at, which is not the kind of 10% was being mooted. I think we're more like a 15% price increase through supermarkets. And I think we're seeing the quantities of goods reduce. And so that's having a massive, massive impact on day-to-day spend. So I'm going to be, as I say, adjusting dietary habits, eating habits, drinking habits. I've already cut out alcohol out. I don't drink alcohol anymore. But also going vegetarian part-time, just to make some practical changes to help. I'm also very concerned about the trend of us being underprotected through insurance. So I'm going to be looking at ways to maybe lock in some insurance rates for a longer period of time. Some places can do that. I'm going to be shopping. I should always shop around at renewal anyway, but I'm really going to be quite aggressive on that. And also strongly assessing what I use in a policy and then what I can maybe get rid of. You know, I'm going to be really trimming that back. But also, on the other hand, is what don't I have in policies and what should I maybe be adding to protect me for future unknown risks? And then the third is just keeping this watching brief on where we are with interest rates. Because interest rates, when they can move aggressively and they can really have a big impact, because a lot of the big things that we do are tied to interest rates. Mortgage is a key bit, is one of them. You know, so for example, we're going to be moving to variable rates at some point on parts of mortgage, or parts of a mortgage. That's going to be interesting and important to watch where we're going, have a strategy, and make sure that if I'm on a variable rate, I'm okay with it. And if not, is shopping and making sure early, really early, we're locking the best rates, protecting ourselves financially. These strategies are going to be essential, absolutely essential. That's where it's at, guys. Those are the key focus areas for me in July. I'm working around the clock. I'm trying to see what's coming and trying to get strategies to help deal with it. And of course, I'll be sharing everything I can see and doing and am learning and thinking on the channel. All right, guys, look, happy planning, happy Sunday, enjoy your day, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.